In this video, I want to answer the question, what is an assumptions log? Well, this is an easy one. An assumptions log is a log of all the assumptions that you make on your project. It's a record of your assumptions and of your progress in confirming or testing those assumptions. So it will also record the status of the assumption as either confirmed, negated, or still an assumption. You'll start your assumptions log at the definition stage of your project, and most of the work will happen in that stage and during the planning stage. Because the nature of an assumption is something that you don't know to be true, but you assume to be true so that you can make progress. So an assumption stands in for a fact or for knowledge. And of course, assumptions are very closely related to risk, because every assumption carries with it the risk that it is incorrect. So often at the start of a project, we build our risk register by figuring out what we assume to be true and noting the risk that it's not true. So assumptions logs and risk registers or risk logs are closely related to one another. Of course, if you have an assumption, you have an uncertainty. And whilst you need to make the assumption to make that progress, if you forget that all it is an assumption, that's what leads to trouble, and that's why we need an assumptions log. And there's a pretty familiar catchphrase that you may have come across. I assume makes an ass out of you and me. So let's have a look at some of the things you might want to record in your assumptions log. But of course, don't forget that the more you try to record, the more time it will take, and therefore the less likely it will be that you will use your assumptions log well. So my advice, as with any kind of log like this, is to record only those things that you know you will need and use. Keep your assumptions log as simple as it can be. But here's a list of some of the common things that you might find in an assumptions log so that you can build your own. Firstly, there's a unique ID or reference number. Then we've got the date that the assumption was first logged. A category for the assumption. You might want to record assumptions as relating to budget or cost, scheduling, or product specification, for example. Of course, each assumption needs a name and a description. So you might go for one field which describes the assumption in simple terms, or you might go for two fields where you have a short name and a longer description. You might want to include a rating for the confidence that you have in the assumption, low, medium, or high confidence. And you might also want an impact rating for that assumption to show the impact of continuing with that assumption and it then proving to be wrong, low, medium, and high again. You might allocate an owner to each assumption, the task of the owner being to test the assumption and to either validate it or to find a new assumption or a new fact to replace it. You might want an action plan for validating or negating the assumption, or you might want an action plan for how you might mitigate the impact of that assumption being wrong. I'd suggest you include a date for when you are going to complete your review of that assumption or make your next review if you've already tried to test the assumption. And finally, a status for each assumption, either open and therefore needing review, or closed and therefore having been tested and replaced with a known fact. So, an assumptions log is a way to keep track of your assumptions. Yes, it's an important part of good governance and transparency, but above all, it's a management tool to help protect the project against the risk that you unknowingly make an assumption, proceed as if it's true, and then later find out that it's not. If you've enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. and perhaps hit the notification button as well. And take a look at the online PM Courses website, where you'll find lots of free and paid resources for project managers like you.